So today's topic is about trauma bonding, and I'm sure many of you out there believe that you aren't trauma bonded. And I say that because I never believed that I was either, not even for a minute, because of my stubbornness and my strength. No matter how I was being abused narcissistically, I spoke up when I believed that it mattered, keyword being when I believed. I talked back, I stonewalled back. If he was disrespectful and called me names, for example, I did the same towards the end anyway. However, at the very end, I completely ignored him as I continued rebuilding myself and no longer felt a need to prove myself to him because I no longer needed his approval because I now approved of my own self. So all of this to say that I know I am not alone in this. I refuse to be treated in this manner as so many of you are. I used to think that being a victim, and I so hated that word, meant that the person was being submissive in the sense that they were loving and quiet through the abuse. They just took it, and I wasn't that. And so how can one be trauma bonded if they refuse to be treated in such a horrible manner, right? Today, we will be talking about that. We will be talking about how trauma bonds take place by the action of the abuser. We'll talk about the 6 stages that take place in order to create a trauma bond. We're also going to discuss at the end how, whether you like it or not, trauma bonds become a chemical addiction. So my name is Deanna King, and on this channel we discuss all things narcissism and codependency. So if any of you can relate to my work, clicking the like and subscribe button would be really helpful and appreciated. And thank you. Okay, so let's start with the 6 stages that occur that form this bond. Number 1, love bombing. Love bombing can look like these really huge steps that they'll take in the romance department. They might start waltzing the person in the middle of the grocery aisle in front of all these strangers. You might be only 3 weeks into the relationship and they're going to surprise you with an amazing vacation or take you out on a dinner date 3 hours out of town to take you to the perfect restaurant. I mean, if somebody goes out of their way to do that, they must really, really believe that you're worth their while, right? Love bombing can also look like showering you with gifts or showing you off to their friends, saying things like, isn't he or she amazing? They might even tell you things like, you're the one that they've been seeking their whole life. However, not everybody gets love bombed in this extravagant manner, because you might be thinking this doesn't apply to me. Love bombing can sometimes be way more subtle than that. It can look like little things such as telling you things like, you're the only one who gets me, or you're so smart, or I just love the way you think. And these little phrases, well, they make you feel special. Stage 2, trust. Getting you to trust them, getting you hooked. They might show you that they are 100% there for your children and show up at every baseball game or every school play. Maybe you're going through some financial hardships and here they are, this reliable person who has your back, no questions asked, no judgment. Another way that they can gain your trust and admiration is through fixing things for you without you asking. Or perhaps they make sure that you're fed and cared for physically. They're going to ask about your day. They'll ask about your pain. They'll ask about your dreams. And you feel that you can really turn to them in difficult times. They become your confidant, your best friend. You feel heard. You feel acknowledged. And you feel that you can really trust them. Another tactic is through caring for you when you become ill, and with autoimmune diseases on the rise, it gives these narcissists a wide open door for manipulation. The narcissist is going to be there filled with compassion, propping up the pillows and fetching dinners. Again, no complaints and no judgment. And you feel that you can really count on them because when the going gets rough, they really, really are there for you. So you've now come to depend on them. Then comes the confusing behavior of devaluation. And this leaves you shocked because it's so out of context to the way that they've treated you. So naturally, you rationalize by telling yourself that they must be going through something hard or they must have had quite a harsh childhood. And now this loving person that they are is in need of some love and security. So you will be the one to help them through that. In the beginning, the criticism and the devaluation is subtle. Things like, honey, you left a pin on the floor. You might want to be a little bit more careful next time, leaving you feeling a little bit off balance here, a little bit awkward and unsure of yourself. It could also be something like, dinner was great, just a little bit cold, but you tried. And then again, you feel off balance, you feel unsure of yourself, and you feel as though you just couldn't do it right. You're also left feeling confused because they were both nice and insulting in the same phrase. This is done purposely. Then the devaluation escalates. The name calling and the direct put downs followed by apologies, leaving you once again unsure, but happy regardless that they did apologize. They may even go back to the love bombing to further confuse you. At this point, the gaslighting begins, which is the next step in these stages. Now, gaslighting is, as most of you know, are things like saying, I never said that, or that never happened. And some of you might start second guessing yourself, where others are left feeling completely frustrated as you continue to insist that they did indeed do or say what they said they didn't do. So you feel as though you're coming unhinged because they have you losing control over your emotions. Gaslighting is more than I never said that. Gaslighting can be things like them telling you that something like, I really came to your rescue today when I overheard so-and-so talking about you, when in fact they weren't. So right there, you are being gaslit because your reality is now in question. Are these people really speaking ill of me? They might even have you convinced that your family is against you or believes that you need help. Gaslighting can also look like hiding things from you, where you could be searching for hours, maybe days, concerned that you might be losing your memory. And even if you don't feel that way, you're still left feeling frustrated. So what do you think that does to the brain? When a person is on high emotion, that is when suggestions get downloaded into the subconscious mind and can easily become a belief. I know because I'm a hypnotherapist. Okay, so moving on. Next comes the renunciation or the resignation or submission. We don't like that word, do we? Submission. And although we may believe that we aren't submissive, we are, because we are tolerating the behavior. I mean, we might be telling them over and over again that this behavior is unacceptable, but by the mere fact that we're still tolerating the behavior and not giving them the boot is accepting the behavior in the relationship, aka submitting. Which takes us to the next stage, where we enter the stage of losing the sense of who we are. Now, by this time, we divert all of our attention on the needs of the narcissist. We make sure that all their needs are met in order to avoid their wrath, or we try to fulfill their every desire with special treatments so that we can get some form of attention. I mean, you're in a relationship, right? Don't you want attention from the other? Some form of acknowledgement would be nice in a relationship. We lose our sense of self through burying ourselves in work in order to preoccupy our minds in avoidance to the psychological pain that we endured as children that keeps reappearing due to their reminders. We have become desperate at this stage, and sometimes we even feel hopeless that anything is ever going to change on their part and on ours, that we'll never be able to get out of these situations. So we submit to the fact that this is just the way it is. We no longer see the friends that we used to see or do the things that we used to do. And also losing our sense of self can also look like no longer believing our own opinions on certain subjects, where the victim is going to start believing the beliefs of the other. But the bottom line is, at this point, the victim has lost sense of their identity and has now become merely an extension of the narcissist, at which point the addiction has taken place and you are now trauma bonded. The victim now craves and seeks the attention and approval of the abuser. They become obsessed with being accepted and acknowledged by the other. The victim becomes completely dependent on the other. Now, let's take a look at the chemical addiction that I talked about in the beginning and how, whether you want this or not, it is happening to you. The mind and body connection. It is a proven fact that memory is stored in the cells of the body. And you can see that in triggers such as a fearful thought, for example, where that pit of the stomach feeling occurs, or your blood pressure might rise, or the heartbeat becomes incoherent when you think of a fearful thought. You've been there. The memory is in the cells, which is in the body. The thought is in the mind. Mind-body connection. So what's happening here is that we have these neurotransmitters, which are chemical messengers that transmit a signal from a neuron to a target cell. And we have different types of neurotransmitters that take care of different messages. So there's dopamine, and this neurotransmitter is associated with pleasure and reward. When the victim feels some relief from the abuser, say the narcissist is now playing nice, the brain sends out this chemical throughout the body, which creates a feeling of euphoria. Next, we have oxytocin. And this one is it's a bonding chemical. It's like an invisible glue, and it's needed in survival. When an infant is in touch with the mother, these endorphins, they get released from both mother and child. And these are reward chemicals that have a morphine-like effect. The child feels safe and calm. Oxytocin is also known as the love hormone. That's how bonds are created. So when we fall in love, endorphins raise our levels of oxytocin. And speaking of endorphins, the nervous system produces these chemicals in order for us to be able to cope with stress and pain. Endorphins can act as such a huge painkiller that it can cause a sort of a numbing effect that can reduce our perception of painful events. And that's often when we end up telling ourselves that, well, things aren't so bad. I can handle it. Next, we have serotonin, and serotonin is a mood regulator. It is associated with happiness, so when a breakup ensues, we can go into these withdrawals because the brain has lost its supply of serotonin. The person can no longer regulate their emotions at that point. And lastly, we have peptides. Okay, so listen carefully to this one. Peptides are chemical productions that match up precisely and exactly to each emotion that we feel, be it good or bad. The cells in your body are completely indifferent as to whether these are feel-good or not so good emotions like fear, guilt, etc., or happy, loving emotions. It's all about the intensity of the emotion. Now, the way addiction takes place depends on, like I said, how intense the emotion is. Peptides they're extremely, extremely addictive. So in a sense, it isn't you per se that's addicted. It's the cells of your body. Peptides are created via the hypothalamus, which creates specific peptides for each specific emotion that you feel. And again, it's all about the intensity though. The more that you think the same thought or feel the same emotion, the more the hypothalamus produces these peptides. I mean, have you ever noticed that when the narcissist does or says something horrific, your mind doesn't stop thinking about it? You try to sleep or you try to work and you can't focus. Your mind just keeps going over and over and over the incident. Well, that right there is your peptide addiction. And like I said, like I keep saying, it's all about the intensity of the emotion. So if the cells feel joy, that's intense. But if the cell feels anger, that's also a rush for them. Now, when the cells get deprived of their chosen peptides, good or bad, the cell sends some of the peptides back into the bloodstream and goes back to the brain so that it can bring up emotional memories, good or bad, because it's just looking for the rush. So now these same thoughts are produced again and again in order to make more of these peptides. I told you it's not you, it's your addiction. So, okay, as we come to closure on the subject, when it comes to abusive relationships, the hypothalamus is making both negative and positive peptides, which means that if, for example, we're doing everything to work on ourselves to have a better life and we start to feel good again, negative peptides get released within and the cycle continues. Fun stuff, huh? So now that I have bored you with all of this stuff, I'm going to leave you with this true process. But don't be discouraged, because all addictions can be overcome. So I am wishing you all an amazing week, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.